Honestly unbalanced.
I want to start with a question about nouns, and this always confuses me when I talk about kirtan or anyone that does kirtan. Am I Should I be saying a kirtan teacher, a kirtan artist, a kirtan performer? What?
Yeah, I like kirtan artist. I don't really feel like kirtan teacher so much, maybe a kirtan guide. In India, it's called a kirtan wala, Wallah, kirtan wala, like somebody that leads kirtan. How about a kirtan leader? That could be good as well too.
But do you teach it? I think you teach trainings in kirtan,
I
don't you?
do. Yeah, I do. I teach a lot of kirtan trainings. And so on that level, I guess on some way I'm teaching, but
Mhm.
um yeah. But in a sense, like leading kirtan, it's not so much a class as much as it is, of course, people joining and singing together in praise and prayer.
It's interesting. Adam said a kirtan performer, and I know it's not about performing at all, but is there any element at all of performance, would you say?
That's a great question. Such a great question. I think it depends on who you ask and who you talk to. Myself, I don't feel it or step into it at all as a performance. I step into it as one as like seva, getting other people to sing the divine names, which is what we do in kirtan, and I feel it as as prayer, really. That's what I feel it as. So I don't feel it as a musical performance. And I even say this commonly before we start. This is not me up here singing to you all. I may be sitting up here leading this journey, but this is a collective experience. And, for anybody that's been in kirtan before, I think the most important thing is maximum participation amongst everybody there. And when everybody is singing, that's when the magic happens. And on the other side of the coin, I've experienced really great kirtan musicians that maybe are doing it with a subtle thread of performance, me singing to you all. And I feel like it's an obstacle to that maximum participation because people just want to hear this person, right? Instead of everyone directing their singing and chanting upwards to God, to spirit, to whatever name you want to call it, it becomes then this person is singing to you and it takes on more of like a concert type of a feel instead of a collective prayer.
I feel I've witnessed that once myself, and I don't know the person well, so I can't speak about them.
Yeah.
But it was when they were, they were doing the call for the response to follow, and there was, I don't know the technical terms, like reverberations in how they were singing. They were kind of Mariah Careying it, it was. I was like, I can't respond. I don't know how to. I don't know how to respond to that. And I think a lot of people looked around and be like, we don't really know what to do at this point. We can't hold that note for a minute.
I agree 108%. Honestly, I've experienced that so much. And I'm not like a classically trained singer. I sing very simple, straight notes. And, and I think that may be why if you call it success or whatever you want to call it, but just been invited to sing all over the world in different places, different festivals. It may be because of that fact right there I'm just giving people the amount that they feel comfortable singing back instead of doing something wild and crazy. So it's very easy, very simple to join in. And again, to me, that's the most important thing when everybody collectively is joined together.
Do you have any tactics? So a lot of people, I imagine, get dragged to a kirtan concert unwillingly. They go with their partner or they go along not knowing quite what to expect. And then there's suddenly, I was in one with Dave Stringer in Berlin, and I'd been on his training, and there were a whole group of people behind me who, when we all started like getting up and dancing, they're like, what the hell are these psychos doing?
Yeah.
Or they're bloody hippies. But eventually they got up. Like Dave did something with his eyes. Like he's a lot of like eye contact with people. He's good with that, and like a lot of like cheeky smiles. And he persuaded them to participate.
Yeah.
What do you have any tactics to persuade the unwilling?
Well, that's another great question, because I hear this all the time with people. Just like you said, people getting dragged. A friend drags another friend. A boyfriend drags his girlfriend. A husband drags his wife. Wife drags his husband. Whatever it may be. So, it's for me, it's kind of like reading the room and using the right languaging for the particular environment that I'm in. Right? I mean, honestly, really, what is kirtan? Kirtan is praising God, singing to God. Now, some people immediately, if they hear that, that's going to shut them down. Mm-hmm. First of all, God, what God am I singing to? Am I singing a Hindu God? That means I'm going to be a Hindu now. So in certain cases, when I know that people are experienced with this and are, shall I say, have drank the Kool-Aid, yes, you can talk and use that kind of language with them. But for the most part, if it's newer people, I try to language things in a way that is very welcoming and in a sense, denominational, in a sense, that this is for everybody, because I truly believe it is. And we're just calling on the different names of spirit that are used in different traditions, and welcome people to try it on, to invite people to try on this practice. And sometimes even not even talking so much, so they just feel the power of music, because music, as we know, it moves people. And as well, too, I like to give some guidance during kirtan, like I'll say, okay, everybody, clap your hands, clap, clap, clap. And if they feel that everybody is doing this, that, oh, well, I don't want to be left out, or I don't want to be the weird one not clapping. Okay, so I'll clap. And then they're feeling like, oh my God. And this is all, I think, subconsciously happening. I'm actually in unison with everybody. I'm feeling a part of something. And that's undeniable. When you feel a part of something, that's yoga, right? You're uniting with something bigger. And then I'll, invite everybody to stand up and dance, almost to the point where they don't really have a choice, So again, everybody's standing up and dancing. And if they're just sitting down, then they're going to be sort of the odd one out. It's not going to feel so good, right? But if they're up and everybody's up, they're a part of something that's fluid, that's joyful, that's uplifting. And if they can just sort of step beyond that resistance in the mind, then it seems to all be good, and people are flowing at that point. It's a great question, though.
I think you just helped me to kind of see it in another way. I guess kirtan is also, you could say, breaking down that illusion of separation. So it's joining everyone together to help us all realize that we are all going proper hippie now, but we are all one.
Absolutely. And when voices merge together like that, it's just the most special thing in the world. I mean, for me, my first introduction to sacred music was in synagogue when I was 6, 7 years old. I grew up Jewish. I wanted most of my childhood absolutely nothing, no involvement with Judaism. My parents forced me to do everything. But when I was in the synagogue and I would hear people singing together these holy songs of praise, something happened. And I remember it vividly, even crying at times, because I actually just felt choked up a little bit just remembering that, because it's a palpable feeling when it's heavenly, to a sense, when many voices start joining together as well. It's a unitive experience.
It's in every sense, though. It's not just in spiritual music, even like in a football game, the unified chanting. Because we are, as human beings, although we evolved as an individual, we evolved as individuals, and there was obviously natural selection. But a big part of our evolution was a group, as a group, and almost like a beehive. There is a big part of us that's meant to be together, and we are meant to do things together. Not all things all the time, but I think in modern culture we are missing that to some degree. Everyone's a little bit solo and a little bit selfish,
especially in London.
Yeah, well, especially in big cities like London. And with the absence of church and the decline of church, there were very few things that bring people together in any sense. Yoga is one of them, I guess. CrossFit is another. But even in those things, it's very rare that people, well, it depends on where you are, that people actually talk to each other and actually chat. And we are missing that, aren't we? And we need to find ways to replace it. And actually, every time I've been to a Kirtan event, there has been conversation, there's been unity.
I agree. And, I've used this example many times as well, too, about sporting events. I mean, I'm a huge athlete, always have been my whole life, still am. And coach, my daughter's basketball team, soccer team, son's basketball team since, they've been 4 years old. Aww. And there's just, I love like the Lakers. I go to Lakers games, and that when everybody is chanting, that's one of those unitive experiences. But that's like about all we have in modern culture. We don't have people joining their voices together as one, focused on one thing together. But when that happens at a stadium, that's massive. Like that feels so good. But love that.
There's a huge fear in the Western world around sounding good. This has been a huge theme in my life, being in a girl band and always, having to hit the note and for everything to sound perfect. And, you got shows like The X Factor and The Voice where you literally get a big fat, if you hit a bum note and the audience start booing you off the stage. So I think there's this real fear around people using their voices in so many parts of the world. Is that something that you touch upon in your trainings, overcoming that fear of using the voice, or is it just, throw them in the deep end, just get on with it and get through it?
That's it. I love that. I really do, because first of all, my wife has some great stories about this, because she grew up, in theater, acting, music. She was in a girl band as well too.
She's got a beautiful voice, by the way, your wife.
So she attributes the practice of kirtan to shifting from what we were talking about before, that anytime you use your voice, it's a performance, to no, you can use your voice as a prayer as well too. And from that perspective, it doesn't matter so much what you sound like, as long as your heart is in it. Now, that's something that I like to focus on as well too. And I have to be honest, some of the most powerful kirtans that have made the hairs stand up on my arms have been from people that I've heard sing who did not sing in pitch. One time specifically, I'll just share a little story. I was in India on a train from Delhi down to Vrindavan. It's about a 4-hour train ride, 3-4 hours. And there was a blind man with a little begging bowl, just walking up and down the alley, the row. And he was singing Sitaram, 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 Sitaram. And he was completely out of pitch. But I started crying because I couldn't believe that this man, all he had was this mantra. And this mantra, Sitaram, was literally feeding him. And the power of that he had totally taken refuge in this practice of kirtan and singing Sitaram, that's all he had. And that came through his voice. So although it wasn't like musically perfect, there was a quality of such deep yearning and love and almost desperation inside of his singing that it really affected me and affected my heart. But yes, in our trainings, a lot of people show up with really beautiful voices, and some people that are struggling to sing in pitch. And my number one thing in kirtan is it's about your heart. It's about your devotion. It's about the love that you put into it. That's what kirtan is. Going back to before, it's not a performance. But as we develop our kirtan, naturally, we want to cultivate our voice and do our best to sing in pitch and make it pleasing as well too. So
would you consider that for these people that find it hard to sing publicly, and like I kind of am one of them, I'm happy to sing as part of a choir, but solo, oh.
You've actually got a nice voice though.
But I've always believed that a yoga practice, it depends on exactly what you're practicing, but there should be subjective challenge. And through that subjective challenge, you can find growth. But I think the challenge is important. Without a challenge, there's nothing there. I think it's fine occasionally to do some yoga that is just like pure relaxation. But generally speaking, I want some kind of challenge, and I want to maintain a steady breath and steady mind through that challenge. And the same could be said, I think, for kirtan. Like when I sang, I was in Dave Stringer's training again, I had to lead the kirtan. Like it was a challenge for me, mentally, physically a little bit, hitting the high notes. There was a challenge. But so much growth came from that. And I think that, for me at least, is a really big part of the yoga practice, that we want that discomfort and to let go of ego.
I agree. Anytime we step into it, and you just said that so beautifully, Adam. I mean, like challenge, really, the way I like to think of it, all challenges are just like, what could we say? Ripe soil, fertile soil for growth to take place inside of. And as yogis, if we're intentionally, consciously stepping forward on a yogic path, I think there has to be challenge for that growth to take place, whether it's in a yoga pose, whether it's singing out, whether it's sitting in meditation, calming your mind. It's almost in a certain way welcoming these challenges, stepping into the places and parts of ourselves where we do feel challenged. And as we move through them, as you had just said, we start to feel something happening, some growth taking place, and that feels so fulfilling.
I'd love to know, it's a question that I'm always wondering about the pronunciation of mantra, because there's different schools of thought. There's the people that really believe that pronunciation is so important because of the way it vibrates in your body, etc. But then I was speaking to the lovely Radhika Das, who said that if it's all about the intention, really, and if you mess it up a little bit, but it comes from the heart, that kind of overrides that. So I'd love to know your.
Can I add a layer onto that question as well? But I presume that just like Holly and I, and us and you, have very different accents and ways of saying English words, I imagine that would be the case in India, of course, as well. There were different accents, and people would say the same names in a slightly different way, or the same words in a different way.
Well, that I love this question too, both of y'all. I think a couple things come up for me. Is one, as a little child is learning how to pronounce things, and they say, nothing's coming to my mind, but say like a word, and it's a little bit off, but the parents know the word. You two are new parents, and as your son begins to speak, you'll think it's adorable when your son speaks something that they're trying to do, and it may be a little bit off, but it gives tremendous pleasure to your parents, to the parents, because the parents feel that love. Well, in the same sense, the way I like to think of it, as that if that intention is there and right, God loves you even more, and because we're all God's children. God's not judging us because we're mispronouncing anything. It's only the human mind that judges like that. If God is unconditional love, no, God loves you just the way you are, even with all of our imperfections. Now, from a technical perspective, and this is more of a yogic perspective, when you're chanting mantra, like now kirtan and mantra are different. Kirtan, we're just simply chanting the names of God.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, mantra is a little bit more, has more like rules involved with it. Like, asatoma, sadgamaya, tamasoma. There's a certain meter that it should be chanted. The pronunciation has to be chanted. And then it has like a certain effect. And that's a little bit more, I would say, of like an orthodox kind of practice, where everything has to be done just right to have a certain effect on summoning up the energies that you're trying to connect with, in whether it's puja or other ways that you're using mantra. But kirtan is different. We're just praising God by singing God's names. And, I try to go to India every year. And, typically I bring groups with me as well. And one of my main reasons for going is just to listen to how it's done there, because I don't want to be just some Westerner who's taking it and making it mine. You know what I mean? And making it a Western thing. I want to really hear how it's done. So I've always felt really important about the pronunciation of God's names. And just by listening, I don't have any formal Sanskrit training, or I don't know Hindi very well or that sort of thing. And I certainly don't know the rules of Sanskrit, but just by listening to how it's done in India. And, yes, people sing it subtly differently in different parts. I mean, like sometimes you hear like an A sound as like an ah. Other times you'll hear it like an ah versus an ah, so it's very subtle. But so that's how I've kind of just modeled my own kirtan practice after just sitting with great kirtan leaders and really just listening and paying attention and receiving.
At what point on your journey would you say that you connected with your God then? Because I think you went to your first meditation class in 1993, if I remember that from my research. Was it around this kind of time? And what did it look like for you?
It's interesting. Like, I grew up Jewish, but I always, I just always felt, I remember, interesting enough, in a what do you call it? Like a Hebrew school class where they had a music session. I remember the teacher singing, and this is probably when I was 6 years old, the music teacher saying, God is omniscient, omnipotent, and omnipresent.
Mm-hmm.
And for some reason that stuck with me. Omniscient, omnipresent, and omnipotent, all powerful, all knowing, and everywhere at the same time. So it always kind of stayed with me through. Now, I didn't grow up in a religious household. We went to synagogue no more than 2 or 3 times a year. Yeah, we did, Hanukkah over the holidays, that sort of thing. But that always just really stayed with me. And then I got into yoga and started doing some psychedelics, and that really opened the doorway to that presence, whether you call it God, universe, Krishna, Ram, Jesus, Allah, Adonai, just that presence of some greater, I want to say greater being, higher being, that's non-different from our own spiritual self, our own higher self, that we're all a part of this one being, but just different patterns of energy within this one being. Yes, we're separate, but we're all a part of this one. And, I remember my first mushroom journey in college that I did. And I experienced oneness, meaning it wasn't just something heady, but I felt myself a part of the one, and that everything is connected, woven together through this fabric of the universe. It's all woven together through love. And, you know, it was so undeniably powerful and real for me that that's where it really like landed deep and strong. And then, you know, as I started getting deeper into yoga, and then specifically Bhakti Yoga, I just fell in love with all of these gods and goddesses. I mean, I just, like, I grew up Jewish, and Jewish, it's all about, what is it called? Monotheism, right? Monotheism, which is just one God and no idols, you know, of meaning no deities and that sort of thing, which is great. I get that. But at the same time, and I think maybe attributing it to some plant medicine, psychedelics, I just felt open. And I said, okay, I get the monotheism thing, but why can't there be many gods as well too? And so I was introduced, you know, Krishna and Ram and Divine Mother, who I just felt such love for, because I said, yes, that makes sense. The goddess that gives birth to everything. I think maybe because the first place I really learned and felt love was through my mom, as so many people are. So, and then really through the years, I felt like in Bhakti Yoga, there's what's called Ishta Devata. I don't know if you've ever heard of this phrase before. Your Ishta Devata is like your one chosen God, the God that you feel most connected to, that's like front and center on your altar. And I was led to my teachers, my guru Neem Karoli Baba, and this particular lineage is a Hanuman lineage. And Hanuman is the divine embodiment of service and devotion. And all I can say is, I guess I was ripe when I heard that. I was ready, because when I was introduced, it just felt like it clicked. Something was right, and this felt so just natural. And I was teaching yoga at the time, and it just felt right to just start teaching yoga as a form of service, right? Not to stroke my ego of how good of a yoga class I just taught, or how many people I could get in the yoga class, but to really come from a very pure place in teaching yoga to serve the students that are in their class. Well, how can we serve the students? Well, by, you know, whether it's the asana, doing asanas that help to balance and harmonize the energies within their body, by sharing, you know, knowledge and Dharma teachings, that this helps to serve people and uplift them so that they can feel more connected to themselves and live more of a creative, joyful, happy, spiritually connected life. So, yeah, this thing of service really just hit me. And I didn't grow up with any of this mentality, you know. If anything, it was, have people serve you, you know, don't serve other people. That means you're low. Well, in Bhakti, that's what it's all about, is humbling our own ego, right? So that we can serve and be a beneficial presence to the planet and to everyone and everything.
It's so beautiful. Thank you.
Yeah, stunning. In terms of like separation, I think everyone needs to get that feeling of non-separation at some point in their lives, in some way. That, whatever that, it could be a football game, which ideally not. It could be through Bhakti Yoga, or it could be through psychedelics. And you know, there's so much research now that says, to some degree, I'm not, any listeners, I'm not telling you to go and do psychedelics. I don't take any responsibility for that. But what you get from those kind of experiences can be profoundly life-changing. And it's interesting that so many people who've had that experience have that feeling of non-separation. Like, I had it myself, and I remember seeing an ant and looking really closely at this ant for quite a long time. So bad. I had a photo shoot the next day, and I had the worst tan lines. Like, they were very angry with me. I had these horrific tan lines. But looking at this ant on a blade of grass, and it's a beautiful day, and like, looking at it so close, like it must have been pretty much on my eye at this point. And I remember thinking, what is the final cell, as in like an organic cell? At what cell is the edge of the ant? And at what point is air, or at what point is a blade of grass? That the edge isn't that firm. And actually within each cell there is just space. And that was my way of seeing kind of that we are all one, seeing that ant and realizing there's no point at which that ant ends and I begin, or the air begins.
I wish I'd got a photo of this moment.
Yes, I agree. And you know, I mean, the thing is, I think that unitive experience that can come through a variety of different ways, again, whether it's dancing or yoga or chanting or sex or you know, playing a sport, being at a sport, so many different ways is so important, because somehow, somewhere, some way, that memory, when you've had it, it stays. Because I mean, I think we're all just struggling with this human incarnation. I know I am, for sure. Like, the challenges are so big at times. You know, I have 2 kids, a wife, family, my parents are aging, getting older. It's constant. And you know, we can feel so disconnected from everything and overwhelmed by all of these challenges when we identify with, you know, whether it's our bodies or our minds or our thoughts or the stories that we're telling ourselves. So to have something underneath it all that we can maybe curl back into, this deeper knowing that, okay, I'm getting my ass kicked by life right here, but it's all a part of some big master plan, and I'm going to trust it because I have faith. You know, I think those unitive experiences are so important because they give us faith. That's what it is. They give us faith that there are no mistakes, that everything is unfolding exactly as it should, even if it doesn't look the way that I want it to look, you know? So, yeah, I agree.
Can we just stay on gods for a second?
Yes.
I wanted to talk about an experience I had maybe 10, 15 years ago. And I went to the first Kirtan, and I felt really awkward and really uncomfortable. Like, it was quite a big event, and I'd never been to a Kirtan before. And I almost found it almost like disrespectful, was what I felt at the time, in that there was lots of kind of white people wearing hippie clothing, like lots of mala beads, like lots of chakra tattoos is what I saw, all chanting words that I believe they didn't understand, just repeating call and response. And in my head, I compared it to, I imagine like Christian hymns. I imagine going to a random hall in the middle of like Beijing, being full of Chinese people wearing like Christian outfits and like dog collars and looking like priests, running around chanting like Christian hymns and like having a little dance in a booth. That's kind of what I imagine. That's not how I feel now. Yeah. But I wanted you to ask you about, like, do you have you ever had any kind of blowback, or people saying, well, actually you're taking from the culture, or you're disrespecting a culture? Often, I guess, it's probably not people from the culture who would say that. It's probably people who aren't from the culture who will say you're disrespecting that other culture. And also, do people need to understand what they're chanting? Is it important that people like have the translation first? For two layers.
Really nice. So my feeling is, and again, everybody I think has a different feeling around this, and this topic of cultural misappropriation, right, is so clear, so big, and so many people talking about it and debating about it and dialoguing about it. Nowhere in any of the Vedas and any of the scriptures is it said that these chants are only for dark-skinned people that live in India. Nowhere. This, even one of the lines in the Hanuman Chalisa, this 40-verse, prayer to Hanuman, is that Hanuman's glory is sung all over the world. Well, okay. So it's for everybody. Sanatana Dharma. We're familiar with this word dharma. Well, the Sanatana Dharma is the universal way. It's not just for people in India. It was revealed in India to the sages and rishis, but this is for everybody. This is the universal way of things, of how to live a good life in relation to each other, in relation to the earth, in relation to God, in relation to the food that we eat and how we move. Dharma encompasses all of this, but it's for everybody, universal. It's for everybody. So my feeling again is, if the intention's there and the sincerity is there, then there is nothing wrong with this. This is a blessing. This is a boon. This is a gift that we have somehow found our way to some practice that can heal our hearts. And I love what you said, that it's probably not the Indians that are judging you. It's probably other Westerners that are judging you. And that's what I feel. I go to India, and everywhere I go, the Indians are asking me to lead kirtan. Because they're so happy that their spiritual practices have spread to the West. They're so happy about it. And when I was just there in November, I was leading kirtan to like over 1,000 people. I sung a Hanuman Chalisa at this one big, gathering to over 1,000 people. I couldn't even believe it, like what was happening. And everybody was so happy, so happy. They're so welcoming. Now, the judgment, I think, comes from the white people, right? That are probably somehow, and why do we judge? Because we feel threatened, right? We feel threatened. We feel smaller than, and well, I don't want them to be happy and doing something. Look how happy they are. I don't want them to be happy. I want to be as happy as them. So what do? We judge people, right? And we put them down to make us feel bigger than. So I think that's where a lot of that judgment comes from. But do we need to know exactly what we're singing? So, see, there's different ways to look at this. For newer people, I almost feel like at times it's better not to know what we're singing. Excuse me. Because then we're not head tripping around it. We can have the authentic experience of it. It's not a heady thing. It's a felt in the body thing. So that's what Krishna Das always sort of talked about. He wasn't big, still isn't big on teaching so much what these chants mean and what we're singing. Now, on the other side of the coin, I feel that as over 25 years or so, as I've deepened and now am coming to understand what it means, it's even that much more nourishing, actually, to my psyche and to my heart as well, too, because I have there's an alignment of all of it together, you know, the alignment of the psyche with the heart, spiritually and physically, what we're doing all at the same time. So it feels like if all of those things can come together as one, that's a very powerful experience. So yeah, I think that's probably how I would reflect on that.
That's a beautiful answer.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do your children practice yoga and kirtan with you?
Only when we make them.
They're the ones that get dragged.
Well, we've been teaching, you know, my son's 12 now, and we've been teaching yoga to his preschool ever since he was in preschool.
Lovely.
Same with my daughter, who's 7, who is in 2nd grade now. So every Wednesday, and depending on the school year, me and my wife will go and teach 15-20 minutes to the kids. And it's just part of our seva, because I don't know about you all, but I didn't grow up with yoga and the language of mindfulness and this kind of stuff. I don't think where I grew up on the East Coast in Maryland, there were no yoga studios in the 80s, 70s and 80s when I was around. And I have a memory of yoga of maybe some Indian guy in a loincloth sitting cross-legged or something that I saw in like a cartoon or something like that. That was my only real memory of yoga. But my kids, you know, we've never forced them to do anything in this way. Of course, they do it when we're with their school. Both of my kids have grown up since they were, you know, 1 day old in my arms and me singing kirtan to them. They were in my wife's belly while we were singing kirtan. So I'm just trusting that somehow it's going to get through just the beauty and the grace of this whole path of yoga, you know, that it's good for us to be involved in these types of things. And when they're old enough, they'll make their own choices, you know, spiritually. Look, we live in a house where my wife grew up Christian, I grew up Jewish. You know, for Christmas, we were in Australia with my wife's family. We just went to celebrated Christmas and went to church. You know, on Friday nights, we say a little Shabbat Hebrew prayer, and my kids are hearing kirtan and me leading, you know, Indian yogic rituals all the time. So, you know, as I've even said to them, when you're at an age when you want to choose a spiritual direction, hopefully, you know, you have it all out in front of you and you can choose what's right for your heart. And
are they at an age where they think you're cool, or have they transcended that and think you're now uncool?
That's great. You know, I love parenting conversations. You know, it's interesting. My son's 12. He's you know, almost in his teens. He's starting to get hair in his different places and parts of his body, and you know, the changes of puberty that are starting to come along with him. And does he think I'm cool? I don't know. I'd probably not. You know, he doesn't think I'm cool, of course not. But we do play a lot of sports together, and I like to hang out with the kids, and I like to relate to them as I'm one of them, you know, and I love being around kids and just
on the topic of different religions, I just thought, why do you think so many people who are wonderful spiritual teachers of either yogic tradition or kind of Buddhism have come from the Jewish faith? Because so many senior Buddhist teachers they've got Goldsteins and are like.
Maybe because we wanted to get away from our faith so much. That could be it. That could literally be it. You know, I grew up in I just didn't particularly like it when I was a kid. You know, I didn't feel it didn't inspire me. I didn't want to have to wear a suit and a tie and go to synagogue. I was like, I want to get as far away from that as possible, So I when I found yoga and, these guys wearing beards and dreadlocks sadhus with dreadlocks wound up on their head, I was like, this is cool, right? I can dig spirituality like this, But I don't know. I've thought about that myself. Ram Dass, who's one of my main teachers and gurus, he was Jewish. And I don't know. I don't really have the answer for that.
Should we do some quick fires?
We'll do some quick fires.
If that's all right.
Of course.
Go on, Adam. I don't have one in my head. My brain.
Is there a mantra? I'm not going to ask a personal one that you use, but is there a mantra that you think has helped people, like really helped many people, that you've led, that you've explained, that seem to have helped a lot of people in their lives?
Yes, and it's an English mantra. It's not a Sanskrit mantra. It's God puts me in the perfect place, the perfect time, the perfect moment, always, and in all ways.
Lovely.
That. What do you do to relax?
I like to go for walks in the woods. We live near the mountains here. I take my dog out for walks, and as you all probably know, with kids, there's not a lot of time to relax. So, I just like to be outside. I really do. I just love to be outside. That helps me to feel relaxed always, whether it's in the ocean, I'm a surfer, whether that's hiking, whether that's playing basketball or soccer outside with the kids, just to be outside.
And tell us, what have you got going on? Where can people find you? What do people need to know about you? Where's your tour taking you?
Well, where people can find me, I have a yoga studio. I mean, we closed the physical studio in the first year of COVID. It is called Bhakti Yoga Shala. We had a studio in Santa Monica, but now we don't have a physical location, so we're just doing events at different places. But bhaktiyogashala.com is a great website because it has everything that we're doing. Also, of course, Instagram, Bhakti Yoga Shala Instagram. I have my own personal Instagram, Govind Das 108. And that's probably where people can find me.
And Spotify as well.
And Spotify, absolutely.
Yeah, we just read 1.9 million streams you've had, which is incredible.
Yeah, incredible. I got a couple new albums coming out this year within the next maybe 6 to 8 weeks. So feeling really excited about that. And I'm taking another group to India in late March. So if anybody's interested in getting away on a Bhakti adventure to India, we spend 11 days in 2 different places and chant our way through India, do yoga every day, eat incredible food, meditate. It's a really, really special trip. So if anybody's interested, we'd love to be your humble guide through the journey.
I just realized I said Spotify. Actually, don't go to Spotify. Actually, buy the music. Yeah. Buy the music from somewhere else.
You can't. Where do you buy music anymore? We don't sell the music anywhere. Spotify's the only place to get the music.
Oh, is it?
Yeah.
I'll go to Spotify then. I'll take it back. Awesome. It was so
Honestly
lovely to chat.
unbalanced.